Hello, everyone. This is FPL Under the Radar. We are in the middle of the international break two. So we are going to do a data review today. So thank you, everyone, whoever is here with us from wherever you are. This is APL Kante. I'm with my buddies ZD and APL Wrangler. How are you doing, ZD? Enjoying the IB?
Yeah, I'm doing good. It's been a long. It seems like a long IV, and
Mhm.
nothing to follow and
Yeah.
nothing to do. Although we did some work, but game-wise, nothing happening. Luckily,
Mhm.
there is some cricket World Cup, so we are watching some games. Otherwise, it will be so boring.
Yeah, yeah. There is still like another whole week to go, right? Before we
Yeah,
have a Premier League game.
yeah,
Yeah, Wrangler, how are you feeling?
Yeah, doing good. As you guys said, right? I mean, nothing going on really in terms of football,
Hmm.
but rather FPL's contents going on. So we have been kind
Hmm.
of a little busy, reviewing data and publishing on Twitter. So if you guys follow us, it'll be really good, and you can get our contents and subscribe our channel. That would really help us to be coming into the limelight. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, please do follow us on Twitter, as Wrangler said, and also subscribe to our channel on YouTube at your convenience. So today our plan is to basically review some of the data, mostly underlying data, but a few other things as well that has happened over game week 1 to 8. And we'll of course discuss it a little bit as well, if what implications it has uh, on the following game weeks. ZD, of course, you played your wild card just before the international break, right? Game week 8. um, Wrangler, you had a decent game week, right? Sterling finally gives points, right?
Yeah,
So
that's the only highlight I had in that game week. Otherwise, I'd be in very much bad
yeah,
situation.
yeah,
So
yeah. I think Salah captaincy was basically the big delta, right, between wildcarders and non-wildcarders, or the Salah cappers versus non-cappers. ZD, you didn't cap Salah, right? You had Salah at least, so that's a good thing, but you didn't cap Salah. Haaland failed, Son failed. Salah was necessarily the only successful captain, right? But anyway, so we'll talk about all of that a little bit more for the next few game weeks in our preview video, game week 9 preview video. But today's video, we're going to concentrate on the data. So we'll start with the team data for game week 1 to 8 again. Did we lose CD?
I think so.
Okay, all right. We'll keep going. We'll see if he joins. So game week 1 to 8, team data, again, kind of the usual suspects, right? And this is again something that we have been doing for some time. Our 4 quadrant chart to kind of show who the better teams are from an attacking and defensive standpoint. So that's basically the top right quadrant for us, and basically the teams that we expect to be there, right? Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, uh, Newcastle kind of restarted from where they finished last season. Brentford also finished last season strongly. They also kind of started from there. Their form has gone down a little bit over the last few game weeks. Brighton, of course, one of the most attacking teams in the league. Again, they also lost, I think, their last couple of games, but in general, very good team. Tottenham has improved a lot under Ange. So that's one of the teams that to look forward to, not just from an FPL perspective, overall from Premier League perspective as well. They're a strong contender for top four this year, Tottenham, right? Elsewhere, I think Aston Villa, of course, again, same thing, kind of Emery. Since he took over, Villa did really well over the last season, and they kind of have restarted from there, both from an offensive standpoint and defensive standpoint. They look pretty solid. They of course lost Mings early in the season, so that has hurt their defensive numbers a little bit. But generally speaking, they still look like a very good team. Everton is the surprise package, right? They are also in the top right quadrant, and we were laughing about it, right? Like Everton being on there with those all the other teams are kind of hilarious. But they have showed good signs, right, under Shondai. I mean, of course, they were very close to getting relegated last season, and I mean they could still get relegated this season. But in general, they have showed good promise over the first few game weeks, especially from an attacking perspective. They have created a lot of chances. Of course, their fixtures were a little on the easier side, right, with respect to others. But even so, I think they have shown very good promise there. Uh, Man United, your team Wrangler, we have spoken about United before as well. A lot of us started with at least two Man United assets this season. Hasn't quite worked out well, right? Again, their underlying is not that bad, but it doesn't hasn't necessarily reflected on their actual numbers, right? So that's we'll look at the players' numbers as well. We'll talk about it, and of course, from a bad team perspective or like defensively poor team perspective, usual suspects again, all the three promoted teams this year, Burnley, Sheffield, and Luton, have looked very poor during the first few game weeks. Bournemouth and Fulham, last year's promoted teams, they also have looked poor. Forest have shown good signs, right? Forest and Palace are kind of the two teams on the top left quadrant. Palace, we have, of course, spoken about a lot. Defensively, very solid. Forest are also probably not the punching bags anymore, right? We kind of saw them as the punching bag last season, but they're probably not as bad anymore, at least from a defensive perspective. They have defended very well even against some of the better teams. So that's something to look forward to. Wolves also are kind of in a little bit of trouble alongside those five promoted teams that we spoke about. West Ham's defensive numbers also look bad as well. But yeah, that's basically the overall team data review. Anything that you want to add, Wrangler?
Just a couple of things. One thing is, as you can see in this plot, right, there is a clear pattern. At least in this season, you see like there are a lot of bad teams to attack, right? And if you just draw a line, it's kind of a linear line, right? And because of a lot of bad teams, actually there are a lot of good teams as well, at least underlying data wise, right? So which is, I mean, I would say, I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be good, but again interesting as well. But whenever the relegation battles come, then those teams which are kind of in poorer side, battle against them will be very interesting as well. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. And again, as you mentioned, right? So there are like all the promoted team and like Wolves and Fulham and Bournemouth, like they were also looking poor, at least underlying wise. Now West Ham and I would say overall like Wolves, like somewhat kind of overperformed, compared to their underlying, especially West Ham during the tough fixture. Actually, they did good, so which we should mention actually, and their good fixture are coming. On the other hand, Everton, they had, as you said, a little bit like good fixture. Their underlying was there, but they couldn't perform. Like they had only one clean sheet out of these
Right.
eight games. So, but yeah, I think otherwise, I think the data shows everything, right? All the good teams and the bad teams in just two
Yeah.
quarters.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of meta discussion with respect to the poor teams, as you said. It is kind of unusual with respect to the last 2 or 3 seasons. Of course, there were other unusual things with COVID, the Queen's death, etc., that we saw a bunch of double game weeks, etc., and so on. But this season is also different because we have so many poor teams, right? It's kind of ideally you would just pick the good players and stay on them, right, for a longer period. But I think this season there is a little bit of discussion to be had where you may want to jump onto players that are playing against these poor teams. So you basically will sell good players for other good players, right? Which is kind of unusual, generally speaking, for us engagement managers. Casuals, that's how they generally play, right? They just jump onto the players who are in form and etc. But we more engaged managers generally try to keep our core solid and then make the transfers elsewhere, right? But this season is a little different, where you may need to kind of look at the more kind of attractive fixtures because there are so many poor teams and transfer those players in, right? So that's something that will again when we talk about in the game week 9 preview video, we'll touch on that as well. But yeah, that's the team data. So let's move on. ZD is back here with us. So a nice segue to the contribution chart. ZD, you want to talk about it? I mean, of course, we just spoke about the team data. Now we are looking at the players that contribute more for some of these teams.
I think ZD's connection is still having some issues.
Yeah, a little fuzzy connection there. So maybe we'll just continue. ZD, stay on hold. All right, so this chart is basically showing the team data, team contribution on x-axis, and the percentage of contribution from players on the y-axis. So what we are trying to identify is, even for some of the smaller teams or maybe poorer teams in terms of data, but a lot of their contribution comes from kind of specific players, as we call kind of talismans, right? So this is essentially a talisman plot to kind of identify for the smaller teams where, whether there are those players. Of course, the right side of it are like really really good teams, right? Man City, Arsenal, Spurs, and so on, Newcastle, all the good teams, Brighton, and so on. So we kind of see that on the plot on the right side of it. Watkins, of course, he looks like the absolute talisman for Aston Villa, even without penalties, right? We spoke about it a few weeks ago that even without penalties, he is a good asset. In he proved that. None of us had him, but he still is a very, very good asset. And of course, Salah, Haaland, etc. They're kind of known. Madison and Son is probably something to talk about. As of today, Madison's contribution, number of contribution is a little higher than Son. But of course, Son is potentially on penalties, and also he's playing as the number nine, right? He didn't play as the number nine in the first 3-4 game weeks this season. But there is a discussion to be had game week 10 onwards. If we want to keep one sparse asset, who that would be, whether that should be Son or Madison. And that's that. And then on the left side of the plot is basically all the kind of poorer teams, I would say, right? All those kind of smaller teams, Man United included, right? We spoke about that their underlying look good, but they haven't necessarily performed the likes of Bruno and Rashford. But what is very interesting is basically the top left quadrant, right? Comparatively poorer attacks, but there are very specific players who contribute a lot to their team, right? Neto for Wolves, Solanke for Bournemouth, Morris for Luton, even Foster for Burnley, uh, Aoni for Forest, right? Kind of not teams that we want to ideally target, but they are players that are very, very involved. If their team scores a goal, they are very likely, at least one out of two times or one out of three times, they're likely involved in that goal, right? So that's definitely something interesting. Ducouré is also someone interesting. We'll talk about his data in some of the later plots. But anything else that you want to add, ZD or Angler?
I would let ZD go first. ZD, you want to add anything here?
Um, you go ahead. I was having issues, but
Okay.
so that's why I could not hear all the stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it was covered pretty well. I think one thing, just again, as you said, in the top left quadrant, right? Those poorer trim, but the talismans, that the good side or advantage of owning those players is, like, if they get one or two returns, they're gonna go into the bonus very quickly, right?
Mhm.
Because they show, usually they don't get much chances, but whatever they can convert, they will just go to the bonus and get a like good return. So I
Mhm.
think, since we are at a stage that we might need two premiums, at least Haaland and Salah, those players are now more appealing, right? Because they're
Right.
enablers to get those two players. So
Absolutely.
so I think people have to kind of find out their enabler, which who can play sometimes here and there
Mhm.
in some of the game weeks, but also, like, you expect them to give returns as well, right? And those players are really interesting, especially Neto. I mean, he really showed like very good, like, I mean, I think he got 7 returns so far, so we
Mhm.
cannot ignore. So yeah.
Yeah, one
Yep.
interesting thing is about Foster. Burnley had actually the worst XG, But Foster, I think he played two. He missed two games, but still whenever
Mm.
he's like if Burnley do anything, he always involved. And Burnley's fixture is coming up. I mean, their fixtures coming up is very good. So I mean,
Yeah.
probably if they score, there is a good chance that he will be involved. And he's only 4.9 million, so that could be
Hmm.
an option as a third striker or like rotating player, like probably with
Yeah.
Neto, right? So that's a good option rather than Archer. Probably Foster
Mhm.
could be a good bench warmer.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Valid point. Yeah, Foster could be a very good enabler. As Wrangler mentioned, in order to own all those premiums or the kind of the 8, 9 million-ish midfielders and forwards, you need some of these players, right? So that could be a very valid strategy. Your eighth attacker rotating between two of these kind of talismans, right? So that could be a very valid strategy. All right, so let's move on to the next one. We are next going to talk about the underlying data, right? So again, all of this data is from FPL Data website. They collect the data from the official fantasy website and also Understat, and some of it is from FBref as well, I think. So Wrangler, you want to take us through the goalkeeper data first?
Yeah, so we actually showed this plot before as well whenever we are reviewing game week 1 to 4, but now the data is more matured since we have 8 game weeks data. So along x-axis, this is the expected FPL points that was calculated in the FPL data website, as Kante mentioned. And along y-axis is their actual FPL points, right? So essentially, in the diagonal line, if any players in right hand side of the diagonal line, they essentially underperform, and if they're in the left hand side, they overperform. So in terms of goalkeeper, I think Leno and Johnston really like kind of stand out here. So Leno, like Fulham, actually, like their defensive number were really not good, right? We also see in
Mhm.
the team plot, but because of his good save potential, and I think did he save a penalty as well? I
Leno
forgot.
did not. No, Leno did
Okay,
not.
but yeah, because of his good like short stopping quality as well
No,
as his
Leno
save
did not. I think Ariel stopped a penalty.
Okay,
Yeah. Around
but yeah, I think because of that, he really, I mean, in order to do overperform, I think those keeper need to do really well in terms of saving, right? And that's where you see for Johnstone, that came from 4 clean sheet, right? So because Crystal Palace really have been looking good, right? We discussed several times that Crystal Palace looking good
that.
defensively, and we see that here as well, right? They got 4 clean sheet out of 8 games, and Johnston just bumped up. So those who won Johnston, I know both of you won, so
Mhm.
it was a great call. Vicario and Sanchez were from two good teams like Chelsea and Spurs, right? They also did really good. Sanchez, like um, lot of us went like different like Chelsea assets Chilwell or others, right? And Nico Jackson, but I
Mhm.
think uh, if you'd have gone to Sanchez, probably in hindsight, right, it could have been a good because it could have been good because Chelsea's defensive number actually really looked good, right? Offensively, they couldn't convert, but defensive number was really good, and especially in this good run of fixtures, right? And Sanchez was really good, and Vicario was like you had better assets from Spurs, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
I think he's probably the fifth or sixth choice, right, from Spurs. That's the thing. But again, I think he did really good. And then Ariola will be the popular one, right? I mean, I think because of his price, now he's 4.3 or so. He's gonna be 4.5 very soon, right?
Mhm.
But he was popular. Essentially, he was kind of having like lower price and also good fixture is coming. So yeah, and he looked good too, right? I mean, he also had good stopping, like short stopping potential as well. We actually had another chart on goalkeepers, like deep dive. So like whoever are watching us, you can look into that chart to get more detailed data on the goalkeepers. Ederson again, City's clean sheet potential was there, but they considered I think 5 times out of 8 games. So and that's where all the clean sheet gone for Man City, and Ederson really couldn't perform well. Otherwise, I don't know. Pickford and Onana were really bad. Nothing to say here. I mean, at least they couldn't perform based on their potential. Now, Onana, their fixtures are again coming good after game week 10, I think. So we'll
Mhm.
see. But again, overall, it was really poor performances from both, you know, Onana and Pickford was, I mean, as you mentioned, right? I mean, Everton's underlying data was good, but they conceded 8 times, and the the Pickford one was really frustrated. So
Yep.
I don't know if there is anything to add here, but
Yeah, couple more things maybe. Flecken, he was kind of APL
Mhm.
Twitter's darling, right? Beginning of the season, but doesn't look like. I mean, Brentford as a team has been poorer, I would say, after game week 3, 4 onwards. And Flecken also hasn't necessarily looked that comfortable in the goal. Has kind of conceded a couple of goals where he could have done better. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I don't think a whole lot of people will be going for Flecken on their wild cards, right? Again, Brentford's fixtures are not that bad after game week 12 onwards. It could have been an option, but I don't think a lot of people will be interested now. The other one that's interesting is Raya, right? Again, of course, Arsenal, very good team. I mean, first or second best team in the league right now. Uh, he could be an option, but again, there are probably better defensive options from Arsenal that you want to go for, right? Either like a Gabriel is now like 4.7, right? Saliba is 5.2, Jinchenko is like 5 million, and so on. Raya, I think, is right on 4.9 or something like that, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, I mean, he could be an option if you want to have just a solid option on your goal. Just set and forget, not the worst thing to do there. But again, who knows? Like Ramsdale may come back, right? One day Arteta decides that Ramsdale has to come back, and then Raya loses his place or something like that. That's the only worry. But generally speaking, I think we have spoken about it before as well, right? Raya just looks much better as a goalkeeper. And data here shows as well, right? Ramsdale underperformed, Raya overperformed, and his last season's performance kind of highlighted that as well. He's just a very good shot stopper, right? So yeah, that's something that was interesting to me. That Raya for the overall for the rest of the season could be a very good option as well, unless you were going for another Arsenal defender.
On these two, I like to add here. First of all, Flecken is injured, so I don't think he's going to be back until
He's
game week 12.
he's ill. I don't think he's injured. He's ill, but
I th- I thought
unknown
okay, I thought I saw
unknown.
somewhere that he's
No,
he's
he's
ruled out for a
ill.
while,
Yeah,
right?
he's ill until November, like for
Yeah,
unknown reason. It's not COVID.
yeah, it's
Okay,
kind of
They did not
unknown sickness or
unknown
something like
illness.
that.
right.
So
Yeah.
not necessarily.
And for Raya, I think like if you have Raya, yeah, it's a very good shout. But again, as you mentioned, right, Kante, that
Mhm,
there could be some odd benching in one of the game weeks,
yeah.
right? So you have to have a backup keeper as well, right? So
Mhm,
you have to make sure that that if you get Raya, you have to get another backup keeper. And now actually, money is. I mean, beginning of the season we said money is not a problem, but now actually money is a problem because
starting
we
to
are
become a
yeah
problem. Yeah.
we are trying to come two players. So just you have to think about it. So yeah.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to the defenders chart. Same chart, right? Expected
Yeah.
point versus point. So who kind of stands out in here?
Well,
Trippier
Trippier definitely. I mean, he had five
and
assists.
Anderson as well, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So Trippier actually had five assists. So I mean, and all of his assists came after game week 4, right? I think so. He had 20. He created 28 chances. So
Hmm.
I mean, that shows like he's bonus monster as well. Anderson again, we talked about it. 4 clean sheet, right? So that played, and he also scored 2 goals. So that just bumped up his number or like points pretty well. And again, we discussed before as well that he went under the radar. I don't know how many people really went for him, but
Hmm.
he was really good asset at that time. White, we didn't go like go for White at the beginning of the season because we thought they're better like value pick from Arsenal, right? Because he was like 0.5 million
Hmm.
higher than other right defenders. But at least these number actually shows, right, that I mean, first of all, Gabriel didn't start in few game weeks, and Saliba really was, and Zinchenko there too. So White was there, and he actually um, played all the games, right? We were also thinking that he could be rotated because of Timber, but Timber got injured after after 2 game, I think. So
Hmm.
yeah, White was really, I think he justified his value as well, at least as of now. We'll see now. Gabriel is coming back and Saliba is there too. We'll see how it goes. But so do you think that no, like Zinchenko or Gabriel is better than White now to pick, or you think White
Yeah,
could
I
be an option?
still, I still think. I mean, Gabriel, especially if since he's now down at 4.7, he's. I would think that he's a much better asset than White, and
Are you
he's.
worried about his X minutes because Partey is
Hmm,
back?
I don't think so. I mean, again, I don't know what was going on in the earlier in the season, but I don't think there is any doubt. At least the Arsenal fans don't seem to think there is any doubt with Gabriel's 6 minutes anymore. I
Yeah,
mean,
and seems
again, he
he's
could
doing
change.
good, right? After
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
back. So I don't think there is a
yeah.
reason. Also, Gini is playing, when Gini plays, Arsenal is a good flow team, attacking flow team. So I think
Hmm.
it should not be. Probably
Yeah, yeah.
rotation between in the midfield, yeah, with Partey,
Yeah, and I
Rice.
mean they kept a clean sheet against Man City, right? Why change
Yeah.
the winning combination? So,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, for zero point 0.8 million delta, I think as you said, it's a lot of money, right? With assuming that will be going for all the other big boys, so I think Gabriel is far better than White. Cash, right? Someone we need to talk about, of course,
Hmm.
right? At least I think 60-70% of the Villa games he has started as a winger. Some of the games when they play four at the back, he does take the right back role. Moreno could be back soon, so that isn't worry. That doesn't necessarily mean that Cash loses his place, but it does mean that he may not be thrusting forward as much. So
Mhm.
that's a possibility. But he still is a very very good asset, right? I think he has risen to 5 million now, right? Started the season at 4.5, but even at 5 million, looking at his numbers, his X points is basically higher than anyone else on this chart, right? So, and he actually underperformed. He could have done better. He missed a couple of very good chances in the last 3-4 game weeks. So yeah, cash is really really good. I mean, of course, um, there are the other Newcastle defenders. Uh, of course, before, like I would say, most of us bought Newcastle defenders in or around game week 5 or 6. We kind of highlighted that right in the past as well. Like Trippier is worth that value, even at 6.5. Now he's getting close to 7 million. Do you think still there is discussion to be had to have maybe Burn or Shar or Botman uh, rather than Trippier over the longer term, or is just Trippier must?
It's a very tricky call, I think.
Yeah.
Very, very tough call. I mean, the attacking potential that Trippier has and the bonus potential, like he is way superior than other defenders, I think, right? In isolation. But now, again, we talked about before that the premiums that we have to have, right? So you have to kind of have, there is a trade-off there, right? That if you get Salah and Haaland, and then like other good midfielders like Saka, like Saka and like say Madison or whatever, Son, it's very difficult to adjust or accommodate Trippier in your team, right?
I think
And
it's, sorry, just to add, I think Trippier is kind of now treated to be like attacker, right? 7 million attacker or
Mm.
forward, because you need to compromise over that 7 million attacker, midfield attacker.
Mhm.
That's the worry part. Sorry, Wrangler, go
oh
ahead.
yeah, so yeah, that's a good, very good point that you brought. So at least as of now, I'm thinking that, well, you know what, Newcastle's good run so far is going on, and after game week 10, I don't know if it's the best run, but again, they look really good, right? Even against the tougher side, against PSG, they perform really well, and Trippier is always there, right? I mean, in
Mhm.
terms of set pieces, crosses, so it's very difficult to ignore him. But again, it's gonna be a kind of sacrifice. If you get him, then
Yeah.
you have to sacrifice with
You
like Saka.
essentially have to sacrifice on your seventh attacker, right? Whether it's the third forward or the fifth midfielder, whatever it is.
Mhm.
That's where you have to sacrifice a little bit if you want to get Trippier in the long term. But yeah, I think there is still a lot of value. The other players who don't necessarily show up on this plot are the Liverpool defenders, right? Of course, Robbo got injured, so not much to talk about him. But Trent is not on this chart, of course, most likely because he didn't meet the criteria, right? He also missed a few games because of injury. But do you think that there is value in getting someone like Trent? He's still like 7.7, 7.8 million, something like that, right? So is there value in even talking about Trent
Uh,
with their fixtures upcoming?
yeah, I mean it's he's a good option, but the problem is then you probably you cannot have Saka, or say you need to compromise Watkins, uh, and Watkins fixture, Saka's fixture, they are also very good.
Mm,
I mean, if we did not have like good performers in mid, in attacker, it could be an option. But I think value wise, Trent needs to deliver 12 points, 15 points, like in
mhm.
most of the games. And Liverpool needs to keep clean sheet, right? So probably it's difficult because it's almost 8 million, which is Watkins price. And
Yeah,
Watkins plays like super attacking side like Villa, and they have very good fixtures. So um,
yeah,
uh, to me, I think it's very difficult to go, because say they concede one goal, like
mhm,
any from anywhere, he needs to score or he needs to assist. Where
yeah,
actually Trippier doing it, performing it, we have not seen it from 20 yet that much, right? And over,
yeah,
say if Robbo is out, I think Sikimas will be LCV, like left center back. In that case, Trent might go a little bit forward, but
mhm,
overall seems it's very hard call. It's that if we spend that much money in the defense, probably Trippier is the better option than Trent. That's I
yeah.
think.
Yeah, I mean, Simikas could be an option at 4.4
Yeah.
million, right? Again, we don't know yet the extent of Robbo's injury, but looked bad, shoulder dislocation, right? So could be a long-term one, 6, 7 game weeks. So why not? I mean, again, given Liverpool's fixture, other than the Man City fixture, they have a really, really good run, right, for the next 7, 8 game weeks. So Simikas could be someone that we may want to look at in the next few game weeks. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the midfielders. Wrangler, you want to take this?
Yeah, so I guess here Salah is Salah there, right? At least in terms of underlying, he was way superior, right? He justifies his price as well. He did quite underperform though, right? I mean, those who didn't own Salah, I would say they were somewhat lucky so far, I would say, right? But yeah, I think Salah underperformed. Saka and Saka could have actually gone bigger, right? As we discussed before several times that he could have got those, like, taken those two penalties, which would have put his FPL points even higher than whatever he got, and could be in the under, like in the, like, over, well, not probably overperform, because then the underlying will be also like XG would be also higher too. So he could be actually in a I think probably even more than Salah, I think, in terms of points, right?
Mhm.
Son was like, he was like, whenever he got hauls, like, he started playing number 9 after a couple of game weeks, but whenever he started playing number 9, he really looked good. But I think he had only 3 or 4 returns so far, but again, whenever he got the returns, it was massive. Boyan actually looked pretty good too, right? We should probably talk about him because West Ham's fixture is turning good, and he did really good so far, and I think he is one of the talismans, right? I think in the ZD's plot, we saw that too. So definitely a good shout, or we should keep eye on him. Even a lot of people probably already went for him, who played a
Mhm.
wild card. Madison is Starling. You see, both of them are having like same point, but Starling, he had two massive hauls, right? Otherwise, he really didn't do much. While Madison was kind of like, consistent. He didn't have very high ceiling or very a lot of points, but he kind of did consistently, like, give returns, right? So that's one thing. Again, Bruno Fernandes and Rashford from Man United was like, they like underperformed significantly, right? I mean, the form was not there, but again, we'll see how they do even in the last game, right? I mean, we were expecting they would get return, but Rashford just got subbed off after 60. They won 2-1, but Bruno Fernandes didn't have any contribution, right? So yeah, that was the case. But again, I think their underlying was good. Couple of Everton boys, right? Doucouré, Danzuma, they are actually also in the underperforming zone. And overall, as we discussed, that Everton did underperform, right, compared to their underlying. And we see for their players here as well. Otherwise, NATO, right? I mean, again, that discussion that he is doing good. NATO, Diaby, and Mitoma. NATO actually even had more points than Diaby and Mitoma, right?
Mhm.
So at that price point, I don't know. We have to think about like is NATO really a good option? I think he is, at least whatever I feel so far. Otherwise, any other player you think?
Yeah, I think just from an again a
Mbumo
fixture.
maybe. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, Mbomo. Yeah, let's not talk about him right now. But I think game week 10 onwards, they're given the fixture swing and everything else, there's going to be a lot of interest again in the Brighton midfielders and the Arsenal midfielders, right? Again, as we saw in the team data, they are two of the best teams from an attacking perspective. Their players are very good, very involved. Uh, we may want to double up on like an Arsenal mid, right? Saka, of course, kind of a non-negotiable, but either an Odegaard or a Martinelli potentially with him. And of course, the Brighton mids were still very, very nicely priced, right? Mitoma is still around that 6.5 million-ish bracket. Uh, Other midfielders are kind of a little iffy from an X minute standpoint, right? March is not starting all the games. Adingra is there. Who else is there? Fati is there, right? So Welbeck is starting games, right? And so on. So it's hard to go elsewhere. But Mitoma would again be very popular game week 10 onwards, right? Given their fixtures, very, very good run. So that's a lot of people like us who sold him earlier because they had a few tough fixtures. Even during those tough fixtures, they didn't necessarily do that badly, right? So they will be again popular for sure. And also Liverpool midfielders, right, alongside Salah, could be Diaz or Jota and so on. Something to look forward to, right? There's a lot of rotation potential given that they have like five players fighting for those three positions, right? And they seem to kind of have a pattern. I think Darwin and Diaz kind of plays together, and Hakpo and Jota plays together, something like that. So we'll need to look forward to that. But Liverpool's fixtures from an attacking perspective are really, really good, right? So just owning Salah might not be enough, right? Who knows? So you may want to own a second Liverpool midfielder as well, given that X minutes are there. But anyways, I think it just kind of highlights that how many good midfielder options you have, right? You spoke about six or seven very good midfielders, and there are Arsenal, Brighton, Liverpool, and so on. So at least like 12, 13 midfielders that are very much in consideration, right? Game week 9, 10 onwards. So yeah, and I think most of our transfers are going to be used in the midfield as well, right? That will be a common theme going forward. But yeah, anything else to add, ZD, on the midfielders?
No, I mean it will be difficult to choose between Diaby, Mitoma, Neto. I
Mhm.
think Gordon as well. I mean,
Yeah.
Newcastle's fixtures are mixed, but they has the high stake G. So I
Mhm.
mean they are super attacking, right? So and he's actually contributing as well. So I think with 5.5, it will be difficult to choose which one you want to choose, and that could be a huge swing after
True.
international break.
True. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny, but the bigger swings may come from the enablers, actually, right? Which
Mhm.
of those cheap enablers you choose. All right, let's move on to the forwards. Rather easier. I mean, there are not too many forward options, anyways. Kind of obvious. I mean, we don't even have to talk about Haaland. Well, maybe we do need to talk about Haaland. And then there is Watkins, right? Again, we have been very adamant about not selling Haaland, right? ZD and I remember it was maybe like game week
What
10 preview or something, right? We spoke, yeah, Watkins. We spoke about not selling Watkins for like the likes of Jackson, etc., or even for Alvarez, right? And he proved that, right? He is the talisman
Mhm.
of that team. He is very close to being a must own right now, right? Again, game week 10 onwards, their fixtures are very, very good for a few, at least for a good stretch. So he's very close to be there as an essential option. His FPL points are also right now higher than Haaland, right? Who would have thought that Watkins would outscore Haaland by game week 8? Isak, very good again. I mean, there is always going to be that doubt between him and Wilson. when they are both feel fit, who plays or who starts the Premier League game. We have seen that Isak being kind of the primary starter when the UCL games are around. Isak starts the Champions League games, right, and then Wilson starts the Premier League games. But still, I mean, unless you're absolutely sure one is injured, it's very hard to go there. But if you know for sure, X minutes wise, I think Isak and Wilson both are good options. Alvarez, again, I mean, all of us kind of bought him before. I would say was
In
that
game
game
X
week
6, I
six,
guess.
right? Game week six or around that time. Uh, there is again a debate to be had, right? To whether Alvarez is a must. His underlying is not necessarily the strongest with respect to some of the other attackers, but again, he plays for the best team in the league. If someone is selling Haaland, for example, for the likes of Salah and Watkins and so on, Alvarez is kind of a cover also, right, for the Man City attack. So that's there as well. We didn't talk about Foden in the previous slide, but between Foden and Alvarez, there could be a cover for Haaland if you are selling Haaland by any chance. And of course, their fixtures are kind of mixed, right? They're playing Brighton this game week. They play Bournemouth in game week 12, I think,
11.
or 11. Yeah, 11. So, yeah, what do you guys think about attacker forwards in general? Again, not too many options, right? Four or
Yeah,
five options.
about that point, I just want to touch base. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
before this game week, like 8, it felt like Alvarez could match, but we
Yeah.
all knew that Alvarez had some lucky assist, and also, I think the free kick was good, the one he
Right.
scored against Wolves.
Mm-hmm.
But as Bernardo Silva is fit and Rodri is back, I think it's difficult to cover Haaland with Alvarez. Whether you go Haaland or probably you can have other good options like Darwin, Watkins, because Darwin experience wise. There was some iffy, but seems like he will get minutes, right? So, uh, I, I mean, the landscape actually always change. To me, seems like um, if yeah, we although thought like yeah, their points are similar, but
Mm-hmm.
Haaland is actually going to be Haaland, like if Man City scores, right? Because with all the other options they
Mm-hmm.
have now, and that over performance from Alvarez, that also talk a little bit about it, right? I mean,
Right.
he actually overperformed, and although he will play De Bruyne role, but I think uh, mm, uh, Haaland is in different world in that sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that is one point. So another point is Darwin, as I was saying. Darwin seems like a very good option. I think Wrangler showed the another chart in the Twitter, right? He is in different
Mm-hmm.
world with his data, and if he starts, he's with these fixtures, he's going to be a very good option
Yeah.
near future.
Yeah, another player that we did not talk about is probably Gabriel Jesus.
Yeah.
Again, he's coming back from his injury. He's below 8 million now, I think 7.8 or something like that. He could be an option as well. Again, not too many slots. I mean, there are too many of these like 8-9 million ish players, right? So you have to kind of pick your bet. But he could potentially be an option as well. But yeah, I mean the forward is line is kind of fixed, right? If you're going for a 3-5-2, you only have two spots. If you're going with a 3-4-3, then you probably have Haaland, Watkins, and Alvarez, maybe, right, as your options, and
Mhm.
maybe Darwin, as you said, right? Darwin, given that his X minutes is not a question, he is absolutely a monster as well. Okay, let's move on if there is
Or
nothing more
just
to.
probably
Yeah,
last touch point,
go ahead.
Hoyland. Do you guys think about anything?
Wrangler,
Because
you
their
want to take
pictures.
this?
Yeah, I was going to
That
actually
was-
add that. So yeah, Holland. I mean, right now, I don't think based on the data or whatever we saw from Man United, right, we are actually even thinking to get rid of other assets from Man United. So Holland is not gonna be, like in the teams right now. But I think at least that's my like personal
Mhm.
opinion that after the game week 10, so they have a good run of fixture like for 3 to 4 games,
Right.
and that's where actually like we might think Holland could be an option, and that's where Gabriel Jesus is also very good, you know um fixture. So the as you said, the landscape changes very quickly, right? We are
Mhm.
thinking about Haaland, Watkins, Alvarez now, but it could be like Haaland and Jesus very soon, right? So we'll see. But yeah,
Yeah,
I think
priced
Haaland and
priced
Jesus very
nicely
good.
also, right? He's what, 7 million, right?
7.2 now.
7.2 million. So yeah. All right. Okay. Let's move on to the last couple of things that we have. This is kind of again in conjunction with what we already spoke about, all the other data that we spoke about. Just looking at the big chance involvement overall. Of course, as ZD was just saying, that Darwin kind of stands out from a big chance. Anytime he starts or anytime he's playing, he just kind of seems to be in the midst of those big chances, right? So he is or around about like 2.2 big chances per game, right? Per 90 minutes. That's huge. Uh, I mean, it's another thing that he doesn't always finish those chances, but he at least getting those chances, right? Haaland and Isak are not too far either. Both of them are in or around two big chances per 90 also. Salah is interesting. He has had a little bit of role change this year, right? As we spoke about it earlier as well. He is more like the assister, especially when Darwin is playing. He kind of is hugging the touchline, creating the chances. Of course, he is getting his own chances as well. Well, he's Salah. He's selfish. He wants to score goals. He's still on penalties, right? Not the best penalty taker in the Liverpool team, but he is not giving them up anytime soon, right? Unlike Saka. So he is just that selfish, right? So Salah is just from a chance getting standpoint, he's still there, but he has really upped his game as far as big chance creation is concerned, right? He is essentially creating more than one big chance every game, every 90 minutes. So that's basically puts him at almost two big chance involvement, two plus big chance involvement every game, right? So it's starting to become very hard to neglect Salah, right? Especially again, given their fixture run, game week 10, 9, 10 onwards. I mean, Salah again can perform against any team, but just looking at the teams that they're going to face in the next few game weeks, it's going to be very, very difficult to ignore him. Elsewhere, I think we did talk about Dukure, right? Could be an interesting option, not much spoken about in the APL Twitter community, but he is kind of playing the hybrid number 9, number 10 role. He's very close to the goal, playing very close to the goal. Even if you look at his heat map, he's very close. So if and when Everton do something, scores a goal, he is very likely to be involved somewhat. So Dukure could be a very good enabler. Again, I mean, we talked about the talismans, right? So he could be essentially the Everton talisman. That's something that's interesting. From a chance creation standpoint, of course, we spoke about Trippier. He stands out. Estupinian is still very, very good. Like again, game week 10 onwards, we may need to think about bringing Estupinian back, right? There is a little bit of minute risk maybe with now Lamptey kind of playing minutes as well, but Lamptey is right now injured. So as long as S2 is fit, I think he's still very much the first choice at left back. He could be an option. Gordon, ZD, you spoke about him. Madison, Diaby, Neto, etc. They are essentially the big chance creators in general in the overall landscape. And Bruno Fernandes, of course, we spoke about him. So that's basically what this chart is showing. Kind of just identifying who are the people that creates the big chances or gets the big chances for their teams. Anything to add, ZD or Angler?
No, I think it's
Yep.
covered pretty well. So.
Okay, all right, let's move on to the last bit of information that we want to share with all of you today. Is the player attacking returns versus blanks. Wrangler, you want to?
Yeah, we already talked about all of this before, right? So it's not underlying, it's rather like how they perform, like FPL wise. So along x-axis, like how many attacking returns they got. So for meets and forwards, it's always attacking returns, right? But
Mm-hmm.
but for defenders, like if they get clean sheet, that's considered as a return as well, right? So that clean sheet is not included here. It's like defenders attacking return. And along y-axis is basically how many times they blanked whenever they started, right? So it's kind of showing like which players were basically consistent in getting returns, and like whenever they got returns, like is it a big haul, or like it's less number of returns, something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
we already talked like Watkins, Salah, Saka, right? Those are the players who got a lot of returns and they were consistent as well, right? They only blanked all of these only once whenever they started. Saka didn't play
Mm-hmm.
one game, right? But the one blank that Salah had, it was like there was a disallowed goals, right? And
Right.
that could have been a return for him as well, and that was the
Spurs
red card,
game.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think basically Salah returned in all the games, right? And Watkins, as we discussed, was like he is kind of getting nowadays essential, because of like you cannot ignore his performance, and also his underlying data was also
Very strong. Yeah.
is good too.
Mhm.
Darwin got 6 attacking returns. His minutes were not very good, but as ZD was talking about him, right? And we also saw in the big chance involvement, he was like very involved, and he already got 6 returns. And whenever he started, I think he started 3 games, he got return in all of the games, right?
Mhm.
And Wilson and Palmer started 2 games. Both of them actually also got returns in both of the games, right? So that's it. And then Neto again only blanked twice, had 7 attacking returns. Madison, we mentioned before, right, that he was more of a consistent side. And Haaland, he had got 9 returns, and both Alvarez and Haaland actually had like that Rodri game, right? That like it could have been more returns for them, right? Probably
Mhm.
not blank, so it could have been different for that game. I mean, in that game, but again, it is what it is. Um, on the other hand, like Son or Sterling, right? They got good returns, but it was not really very consistent. I think, as you can see, right? They kind
Mhm.
of blanked 4 or even 5 times out of 8 games, right? So it's just like whenever you get those like hauls or get those returns, like for example Sterling, right? A lot of people jumped onto him after he got the return, like 19 points, and then a lot of people sold him, and then then again he got returns in last game, right? So it's kind
Yeah.
of like yeah, again there is a balance there, like how much patient you want to be, right? So those players have like you expect them to return, but probably not every time, right? So at least um, that's what we see here. Mbumo, like he get returns only 3 times. Actually, 5 out of 8 times he didn't return, but his underlying data was pretty good, right? And the same with uh, like Bruno and Rashford, right? They blanked 6 out of 8 times. So there is every reason to get frustrated. If you own them, but again, Bruno Fernandez, like whenever he got returned, it was double digit, right? So because he was always a like like creating chances, so that kind of
High on
helps him to get the
DPS. Yeah.
bonus as well, right? So I think that is just wanted to show. And in terms of defenders, right, Estupinian, Cash, Sufal, and Trippier, those are the 4 defenders who got at least 3 attacking returns. So I want to talk about Sufal here at 4.5, and West Ham's um, fixture turning good. What do you think about Sufal? Do you think um,
Yeah, not a
he's
bad
a good
option.
option?
Yeah, not a bad option. Decent option at 4.5, I think.
Okay, but yeah, I think that this chart again not underlying, just to show like how consistent they are and how many returns they got. This data is from FFP Scout, so yeah,
Mhm.
that's
Okay.
all. Yeah.
Okay, I think we covered it all pretty much. Again, we'll come back for our Game Week 9 preview video, talk a little more about upcoming wildcards. Wrangler and I might be playing our wildcards in Game Week 10. What are the other players that we're looking at? And Game Week 9 and onwards, we'll talk about it. But yeah, that's about it for today. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks, ZD, and thanks, Wrangler, for being here with me today. We'll meet you guys soon again.
Yep. Have a good day, guys. Bye.
Thank
You
you.
too. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.